So what's better, RPE or percentages? I'm Ash from Mage, and today we're going to be going over the differences between RPE and percentages, how this actually works in your training, and how do we handle it in Mage. So what are the differences between RPE and percentages? So before we go into that, we need to understand the differences between relative intensity and absolute intensity. Let's start with absolute intensity. This is just the weight on the bar in proximity to your 1RM. If we do a set of 5 at 80%, it's always going to be 80% off that 1RM. So how is that different to RPE? RPE is a relative intensity. Instead of going off an absolute 1RM that you've done in the past, it takes into account reps and it takes into account how you are moving on that specific day. So this is the relative aspect of it. It's not working off an absolute load. It has an intent behind it. And then from there, you decide what weight you're going to put on the bar. So how does this work in training? You can break it down into two questions. How do you want the bar to move? And how do you put the weight on the bar? For every exercise, there is an intent. Intent is what is important when deciding how do you want this bar to move. You put 80% on the bar, but if it's for a single, you want it to move fast. If it's for a set of 8, that's an 100% relative intensity. Therefore, it's going to be an absolute working set. So this is where RPE has an advantage. RPE is an indicator of intent. If it's an RPE 6, it is saying this should move pretty quickly. If it says RPE 10, it's a maximum effort. This is still done with percentages. If a coach writes 90% for a set of 5, that may be a 100% relative effort. So they're expecting it to be difficult. This isn't communicated to the athlete unless you explicitly tell them, this is going to be hard. So the next part is, how do you decide what weight is going to be on the bar? Percentages has a little advantage because it's just a math equation. If you squat 200 kilos and it's 70% today, you put 140 kilos on the bar. But RPE is a bit more nebulous. You've got to take into account reps. You have to have your custom RPE chart. There's plenty of information out there to get pretty close to what load you should put on the bar. The advantage of RPE is that because there is an intent behind it, there is an adjustment for the day. If it says 140 kilos for today, but it says an RPE 6, on your last warm-up at 120, it's moving really well. That might be 145 to 150 kilos for that day. But on the same note, if it's moving really bad, you may be dropping it down to 130. A lot of the time with percentage-based programs, they have this built into it. A coach will tell you that if it's not moving well, take 5 kilos off the bar, or if it's moving really well, add 10. But this is just a process of auto-regulation that RPE has pre-built into the system. How do we handle this on Mage? I believe that percentage, RPE, relative intensity, reps in reserve are all pretty similar when it comes down to it. What really matters is you give an intent followed by weight on the bar suggestions. So as long as you're doing those two things, that is what's important. We've put a bunch of tables for percentages, RPE, reps in reserve, and all the associated reps, so you're able to immediately convert between the options. If you write a set of 5 at 70% and then you want to just convert it to RPE, you can do that. If you want to drop the reps and keep the RPE, the load on the bar will automatically change. In some ways, I feel like this discussion is redundant now. RPE and percentages were a question to ask when you didn't have the technology to automatically adjust the weight on the bar or incorporate the auto-regulation for the day. We now have this. So now we don't have to remember that a set of 8 at 80% is 100% relative effort, and that if it's feeling good on the day, plus or minus 2.5 kilos. You write the intent, moderately hard set of 8, then Mage will figure out the rest. Your athlete will get better results, and you don't have to remember tables anymore. So I hope you liked that video, and if you're a coach, maybe you would like to test out Mage on our 14-day free trial. Thanks, and see you next time.